Ooh.
Hey there.
This here, folks, is a Greg Salazar. Wait, it's actually better than a Greg Salazar. This is the DP505 from Antec in the all-white edition. And today, we're gonna talk about how Antec just keep hitting home run after home run with their new Dark Phantom series. So let's get straight into it. Welcome back to Tech Yes City. And if you're building a mid-range or high-end build, then I believe your next case, you definitely should be using something from Antec. I've been impressed with the last two cases they sent over. In fact, the first one they sent it over, did a build in it, loved it so much that they offered to sponsor out the second video. Now, one thing about sponsorships here at Tech Yes City, I only take them if the product has merit, in that I've tried it out first, I like what I see, and then I can go forward with the video. And even though today's video is sponsored, I'm still going to throw in my critiquing points of the DP505. But first things first, we've got a massive graphics card in this build, the RTX 4090. And the reason this graphics card is in this case is because I wanted to dump as much heat as I possibly could. And this is where I loaded up the CPU and the GPU at the same time, and we're pulling nearly 800 watts from the wall, nearly all of which this case had to push in and pull out. Now with a 4-fan setup, we did manage to raise the temperature 2 degrees with the side panel on versus off. Now basically when I do these tests, if the side panel's on and the temperature in the case is going over 10 degrees, I consider that instant garbage. I consider that case avoid like the plague. If it's around 5 degrees, I consider it mediocre. If it's under 5 degrees, I consider it good. If it matches the same temperatures or even comes under when the side panel's off, then I consider that a really good case. And here's with a 3-fan push and then 1-fan exhaust setup, we were getting 2 degrees higher with that 4090, but then you may notice that I've added in also more additional fans on this final output here, and this is where it got the same temperatures as the side panel off. So if you've got the budget for a few extra fans, this case will definitely deliver in terms of not stopping anything in terms of airflow. Now, a lot of this is due to the front panel design. Super easy to pull off. There's no wires attached to the actual front panel itself. So if you want to change over those front fans, you're not going to be sitting there having to wrestle with cables and change things when the fans are actually attached to the chassis itself. And this front panel is steel mesh, so it'll catch all the dust, but it'll still allow all that RGB goodness to shine out the front. Perfect balance between looks and aesthetics. Though going inside the build is where the real magic starts to happen. We've got 8 rubber grommeted grooves for cable management and also slotted so that you can fit in an eATX motherboard on top of your standard ATX boards. Though at the top you've got that extra breathing room, not just for cable management, but also for mounting radiators like 280mm or 360mm, and you can also mount a 360 at the front. So in total, you can mount up to 2 360mm rads up top and front, and then one 120mm rad at the back. Though at the bottom of the case, you've got that enclosed power supply shroud, and this is particularly important on a white build where we're using a black power supply, so it won't really take away from the aesthetic. Though you may also notice with this RTX 4090 that it's not suffering from any GPU sag whatsoever, and that's because they've included a support bracket for your graphics card where you can mount up to 375mm long GPUs. So practically any GPU will fit inside this case, but also you won't get any GPU sag because of that bracket. I find it very handy that this is included. It works extremely well considering this GPU weighs over 2 kilograms, and so it's one of the heaviest GPUs you can get, and it's doing a perfectly fine job of keeping everything stable. Though you may also notice with the fans here, we've got 7 case fans mounted in total, 3 at the front and also 4 inside, though you can even mount an additional 2 fans at the bottom of the build for 9 fans in total. Though once you've mounted all these fans, we're gonna move over to the rear now, where even more magic starts to come alive with the DP505. Though looking at the cable management here on the rear, this took me about 10 minutes in total to get what I would consider a really clean cable management job at the rear. You're probably thinking, Brian, that's too clean for Tech Yes City. And I would say yes, but the case is so easy to route things in, where this LED board here, as well as the front panel I/O connectors, they all come pre-routed and neatly tucked up. So basically when you're routing all your extra cables, all you have to do is untie the included Velcro ties, slot your cable in, and then tie them back up, and you've got easy cable management, which if you look at a build like this with 7 fans, there's just so many cables that this case actually does really well to hide all that. And a lot of that is also thanks to the extra clearance room you get at the rear of the build, where it's over 20 mil clearance in order to get the cables, of course, packed down, but you don't have to worry about having a thick connector in the way and the back panel not fitting on, which I've actually come into trouble with builds in the past having this exact problem. You may also notice there is an included RGB hub, which is standard 5 volt individually addressable RGB. So you can connect this to the motherboard if you wish to control via software, or even in case of using an ASRock motherboard, via the BIOS, or you can control it via the top of the case with the LED button. I prefer having manual control, no software, even no firmware, just this LED button at the top, because it's simple. It won't get in the way of dropping FPS or anything like that whilst I'm gaming. Also in total, we did use an additional small LED controller because we do have 8 ARGB fans in total in this build. Though as for drive bays, you can mount 4 drives in total, if that's 4 2.5-inch drives or 2 3.5-inch hard drives, plus 2 2.5-inch SSDs at the back here. Though as for power supplies, you can mount up to 160 without having to remove the drive cage. Though if you want to remove the drive cage, you can then mount your power supply with sizes up to yonder. Also, in terms of mounting this power supply, you've got a bracket here if you want to mount the power supply onto the bracket first, but I actually just put the power supply in and screwed it off without taking the bracket off. And also these thumb screws here that they use included in the build, they're using captive thumb screws. The top and bottom of the case use removable dust filters, and the tempered glass is 4 mil thick, and it also features no tint, which is how I personally prefer tempered glass side panels. Though the final point to touch on with this case is the front I/O, which is actually mounted on the top of the case. You've got a very nice power button followed by the LED button, followed by your hard drive and power LED indicators, as well as 2 USB 3 standard jacks and a USB Type-C. And then you've got your mic in and headphone out, which are both 3.5 mil jacks, and they are separated, which I do personally prefer over the 4-pin hybrid. Though taking all those points and now putting them into a conclusion with the DP505, we'll get out the critiquing point straight away, and that is, I wish Antec would include a 4th fan at the rear. I think an exhaust fan is really critical for getting the most out of the DP series. And I saw this in the previous case they sent over. There was only 3 fans at the front. I would even like just a basic plain fan included at the rear, just because I believe that 3 fan push and then 1 fan pull setup is ideal, even if you're on a mid-range budget, which segues into the price of this case. It's coming in currently at $120. And I feel for this price, it is phenomenal value, but also it's great for someone who wants to max out a high-end build like we've pretty much done here today. Yes, I've added in some more fans, but I'd be more than comfortable with a 4-piece fan setup and an RTX 4090 in the DP505. Not only is the case an absolute looker, it performs extremely well, and on top of all that, it's extremely easy to build in this case right here. I'm pulling off cable management that looks like $1 million, and I'm doing it in 10 minutes, where other people will spend hours on cable management and still have frustration where they may have to pull things out after they've booted up the machine and spend even more time. So the ease of use and the ease of building in the DP505 and also the other Antec cases we tested here makes it so that I really am favoring Antec's cases at the moment, especially over the likes of Corsair and other cases that I've previously built in the past. This thing does get an award for just being so simple, but being so good in terms of the end product too. Now, in terms of sharp edges, there's also none of that in this case. So if you are a diabetic, for instance, and you are prone to cutting yourself easily, this case won't give you any problems whatsoever. Though up until this point, you may have noticed that we've got a 750 watt gold rated power supply, and then we've got an RTX 4090. And here's where I'm going to talk about what you can do in terms of being on even a budget going into the high end. I know this may be a concept that just seems like mind-blowing, but you don't need to spend any extra money out of practically all the parts that we used here in today's build. The fans that are included at the front, they're extremely quiet. In fact, I'll quickly hug the build without hitting the mic. And that's pretty much how loud these fans get, even when you're gaming or when you're doing heavy tasks like running a Cinebench benchmark. Though one thing I will say is that I only used one fan on the CPU cooler with the 13600K, and that did go up to 100 degrees in stress tests, but the performance drop was still very minimal compared to keeping the CPU at 90 degrees or even 85 degrees. However, whilst we were gaming, there was no problems whatsoever, and the noise still remained quiet, and the build was still a great looker. And so this leaves this build tally to around $2,500, and you're probably like, $2,500, but I kid you not, this is pretty much the best setup you can get right now, bar none. You can't get any better than this. And I've seen other setups out there in the wild that will go for over 5,000 bucks, and those people are just not going to be gaining any FPS, especially at 4K, where I believe the RTX 4090 is best suited. Also, when it comes to gaming, do make sure nowadays you're undervolting your CPU, undervolting your GPU, and also if you've got a FreeSync or G-Sync monitor, cap the frames in the driver itself, and you'll just be saving so much power. For instance, when I'm playing Dota 2 at 4K, 135 FPS max settings, I'm pulling under 200 watts from the wall. When I'm playing Apex Legends, same thing, max settings, I'm pulling just a little bit over 300 watts. So for the performance I'm getting, this whole setup here is extremely power efficient, believe it or not. Even though you see those numbers at the start of the video with over 400 watts in firm arc and over 800 watts from the wall, you're probably thinking, Brian, you're crazy going with a build like this. But once you start tuning the PC up, undervolting it, you'll realize that actually the 750 watt running at that 50% efficiency peak gold rated power supply is actually not a bad idea at all. Though if you guys want to know more about the other intricacies involved in tuning a gaming PC 100%, then do let us know in the comments section below. I love reading those thoughts and opinions. Also, not to get too sidetracked from the main star of today's video, the DP505, excellent value in terms of being just a mid-range or high-end build case. Don't feel like you have to go out and spend $200 or $300 even on a really high-end rig to get some of the best performance out of a case. This thing will deliver, and also do it in a way that just makes the whole process of building PCs that much easier. So very impressed with what Antec have coming out nowadays in 2022, and I look forward to seeing more of their cases in the future. And also, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit that like button and let us know as well in the comment section below, are you digging what Antec are delivering to PC gamers in 2022? I certainly am. I think they're hitting home runs with their cases, really enjoying it to the point where my next main PC will definitely be using an Antec case. Though do love reading your thoughts and opinions, especially on this build. Would there be some things that you would change personally? For me personally, if I was to change one thing in hindsight, I'd swap that air cooler for a 120mm liquid cooler and use that fan off the air cooler and then have a push-pull on the water cooler, bringing air out of the case of the rear, but also then freeing up room to allow the GPU to then push more air out of the top of the build. Anyhow, guys, look forward to reading your comments down below. As always, just like this question of the day here, which comes from Greenbow, and they ask, you could undervolt a bit and the temp's under control. Have you ever tried putting a power limit on the CPU like DeBauer did recently? So DeBauer did a test where they were limiting the amount of watts the CPU could use. that was a very interesting video. I personally haven't got around to spending a whole lot of time with the 13th gen and undervolting just yet. I did a quick and easy method and I still got some pretty impressive results, though I will buckle down and look at many different frequencies and voltages and also apply limits like DeBauer did and get to the bottom of it, just like we did with the RTX 4090, where I feel that you can undervolt that and put on a power limit both together and extract the most out of the RTX 40 series when it comes to undervolting. Though I will be bringing out tutorials on those in the next coming month, hopefully. I've just been completely bogged down in terms of these recent launches and trying to give you guys the best coverage possible. Now, in terms of putting power limits on the CPU, definitely looks promising on the Intel side of things. I'll look into that more. Thanks for the question of the day and hope that answers that question. And I'll catch you guys in the next tech video very soon. If you stayed this far and you're enjoying that Tech Yes content, then be sure to hit that sub button, ring that bell to get the vids as soon as they drop, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace out for now. Bye. At the rear of the build. Hi. Sorry, Greg. It's a really nice case.